Shanghai sits on ground that shouldn't hold a city at all. Beneath the streets, there's no bedrock for tens of meters, just soft marine clay and silt, laid down over thousands of years in a river delta, ground that can barely support its own weight, let alone a skyscraper. Yet here stand some of the tallest buildings on Earth. Engineers had to solve what the ground refused to offer. Layer by layer, foundation by foundation, this is how mud became a megacity. Preparing the ground before anything could rise, the ground had a problem. It was full of water, and water doesn't hold weight. Not a wall, not a foundation, not a single floor above it. Engineers drove vertical drains deep into the clay. Drain by drain, giving trapped water somewhere to go. Crushed stone and sand were piled across the surface. Layer by layer, the weight pressed down, squeezing water out from below. Vacuum systems pulled that water up and away, pump by pump, day by day. The soaked ground began to lose what made it weak. Heavy machines compacted what remained. Pass by pass, strike by strike, driving the loosest layers down until they packed tight. Months passed. The ground itself began to sink. Millimeter by millimeter, it settled under the load. That was the point. Ground that settles now won't settle later. Not under a building. Sensors buried in the clay checked the result. Test by test. Firmer ground confirmed. Across the delta, the same process repeated. Field by field, site by site. Turning soft ground solid one plot at a time. Months of work before a single foundation touched it. Firm ground still wasn't solid ground. To carry a skyscraper, the weight had to go deeper. Straight through the soft clay. Down to a layer strong enough to hold it. Massive drilling rigs bored through the mud. Bore by bore, meter by meter. Some shafts reached more than 80 meters below the surface. Until they found ground they could trust. Steel reinforcement cages were lowered into each shaft, cage by cage. Concrete filled the empty space, pore by pore. Each shaft hardened into a concrete pile. Deeper than most buildings are tall, One pile, then another, then hundreds more. Hundreds of piles were built beneath a single tower. Pile by pile, row by row, an invisible forest grew beneath the surface. Once the work was finished, no one would ever see it again. Above them, the raft foundation began to take shape. Meter by meter, it spread across the pile heads. It tied every pile together. It spread the tower's weight. Now, the city could begin to rise. The first cranes arrived. Steel began to arrive. The first columns rose from the ground. Building by building, Shanghai started to take shape. But a city needs more than skyscrapers. It also needs what runs beneath the streets. Tunnel boring machines push through the same soft clay. Ring by ring, meter by meter. Each new section was lined with concrete before the ground could collapse. Where tunnels crossed, engineers froze the clay solid. One cooling pipe at a time, turning soft mud into solid ground, strong enough to dig through safely. Station by station, the metro system expanded. Line by line, it connected the growing city. While buildings climbed into the sky, the infrastructure spread below. Both grew together. Both turned a construction site into a megacity. The foundations were complete. Infrastructure was already in place underground. Now the first towers could rise. But one tower doesn't make a mega city. Steel frames rose above the foundations. Floor by floor, story by story. Each new level added more weight. Onto ground engineers had spent months preparing. And it held. One building became 2, then 10. Crane by crane. Beam by beam. More towers rose beside the first. Streets appeared between them. New construction sites opened. Entire city blocks began to take shape. What began as a few buildings became entire neighborhoods. Shanghai was beginning to grow. As the city expanded, sensors tracked every movement. Because on ground this soft, every millimeter mattered, reading by reading. Engineers tracked every millimeter of movement, making it safe for the next tower to rise. Even finished buildings continued to settle. Around the clock, concrete kept arriving, truck by truck, pour by pour. At the center of every tower, a concrete core climbed higher, the spine everything else locked onto. The towers climbed higher and higher. Floor by floor, office by office, higher than this delta soil should ever have allowed. Until one of them stood more than 800 meters tall, above ground that used to be a riverbed. A tower the ground was never supposed to carry. Yet there it stands. The sensors still watch, millimeter by millimeter, because the ground beneath the city never stopped moving. It never became rock. It never became solid. Yet today, it carries one of the largest megacities on Earth. Not because the ground changed, but because engineers learned how to build on it.